In 1998, it had been 20 years since he killed the babysitters, and this October, he's back like you've seen him 6 times before. Halloween H20, or Halloween 20 years later. No shit! It's Halloween, baby! What up, party peoples? Bobo here. Thanks for joining me for another Halloween. This is year 3, and I didn't finish the Halloween franchise last year, so I'm picking it back up where I left off with Halloween H20, or Halloween 20 years later. So look, when this movie came out, I was stoked. I was so pumped up. Again, it had been so long since we had had Michael Myers, and especially a good Michael Myers movie. And coming off the coattails of Scream, people were reinvigorated for a good slasher at this point. People were ready for it. And they were even able to get Jamie Lee back around this time too. So before David Gordon Green did his Halloween movie that takes place after the first one that cancels all the sequels, this one did the same thing, kind of. It doesn't necessarily say that what happened in 4, 5, and 6 didn't happen, but it picks up with Laurie's story, and she even says in the movie that he burned to death. I saw him burn to death alive. So they acknowledge part 1 and 2 in this one. And she acknowledges that she's his sister. So this is definitely referring to part 1 and the lore of part 2. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily say that 4, 5, and 6 didn't happen, but it doesn't talk about those. Right off, we get an awesome opening scene with a young Joseph Gordon-Levitt and the same actor who played the nurse in the original movie when Michael escaped. She gets off, Joseph Gordon-Levitt gets off with a hockey skate. So right off, I'm loving all this. My one main complaint about this movie, and I'm just gonna say it right off because it kind of affects the entire film, is the score. It's beautifully done, it's well written and all these things, but I think what really worked about those original movies, the first one and the second one, is they were very simple in the score. The first one was almost all piano with a little bit of synthesizer like beats in there. And the second one had more synthesizer in the theme and stuff like that. But still very simple and very minimal. This one they added a whole symphony to it, and it just, I don't know. It sounds good. If I was actually watching the orchestra play it, if I was going out for a Halloween evening watching this orchestra play a Halloween score, it'd be awesome. But as far as it working for the scariness of Michael Myers, the tension that Michael Myers needs to bring, I'm not sure it works all the time, and I think it's kind of the main down point of this movie. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of flaws about the film that I don't like, but we'll get to those. So it's starring Jamie Lee Curtis, but it's also got Josh Hartnett in it, LL Cool J, Michelle Williams, who was popular for Dawson's Creek at the time. Hell, it even has a cameo by Janet Leigh, Jamie Lee Curtis's mom, the girl that got killed in the shower in Psycho. So that's kind of cool already. But one of the things about this movie that really stands out is that they were trying to model the whole Scream formula, just use Michael Myers in it. This movie was even written originally by Kevin Williamson, the guy who did the Scream movies, or most of them. And from what I understand, they still kept his story and everything and the way of the chain of events and the way he laid things out, but they just had some other people write the screenplay and ultimately they got credit. However, Kevin Williamson does have an executive producer spot on this film, so I think it all worked out for him in the long run, and he still had plenty of gigs later on. But it really does feel like a Scream movie. So much as to where there's a part in the movie where the 2 girls are in their dorm watching Scream 2.
Do you wanna die tonight, Cece?
So the whole premise of this is that Laurie Strode has changed her identity. She's become like this dean at this boarding school, or they call it a headmistress, and she has a son who's 17 or 18 years old. But it's a private school, it's all like out in this weird forest kind of, it's weird. But ultimately they just paint the picture that she's been trying to move on her whole life, but every Halloween this kind of haunts her, and it actually has been haunting her daily because she has a drinking problem and she takes a lot of prescription medicine. They do a nice little exposition of that. But just to give you the premise of like why they have this encounter with Michael at some point, is that the kids are supposed to go on this camping trip, this end of the year camping trip, graduation thing or something. But ultimately this core group of main kids, which involves her son, end up staying back, not telling anybody, and then all this other stuff ensues. So what I'm about to talk about, part of me likes and then part of me doesn't like. They don't explain how Michael comes back. We saw him get blown up and burned to death in part 2. So they don't explain at all how he comes back. And when you see him, he doesn't have any of the burn stuff on his hands or anything like he had in the other movies from being burned alive. He's just got this clean hand. So I don't know how I feel about that. Even though she's saying that part 1 and 2 existed, it doesn't have that continuity there at all. It was just lazy to me. And speaking of lazy, the mask that Michael has is, oh God. Sometimes it works, and then sometimes it doesn't, and then sometimes it's literally a CG mask. I'm not even kidding. You can see right here, and it's talked about all over the internet. Then look at this CGI Michael Myers mask. But look at this right here. I mean, this was in the trailer, and then they realized that people are not gonna like that, and so they actually switched it and reshot it for the film. But man, altogether, it's like, why were y'all messing with this mask? Just make it like the original one. Anyways, that's just people trying to have too much creative pool, especially in that time when the movies hadn't been successful and they wanted to revamp Michael Myers. All these people were just, too many cooks. But again, God, look at that. CG? Come on. But ultimately, Michael makes his way over there to the school. He finds out where she is. And remember, in this lore, they're brother and sister, so he's wanting to kill his sister. I love LL Cool J's character in this too because he's like this funny dude a little bit. He's a security guard for the school, but he's always talking to his wife on the phone, and he's like an aspiring novelist, a romance novel. And I love it when he's describing the novel to his wife, and he just says, round melon breasts.
Leading to 2 tumultuous round melon breasts.
Round melon, what?
That always makes me crack up. I mean, you can't help but love LL. It's directed by Steve Miner, who actually did Friday the 13th Part 2 and 3, and he was an associate producer on Part 1. So the direction of this movie is actually really good, and I mean, it has the right slasher vibes. So while I was complaining about those mask issues and sort of the continuity stuff with his non-burnt hands, and even though they mentioned that he was burned alive, as a whole, I think there's a lot of good with this one, and I really like it. Like, I really like the kills. I think all the kills are pretty solid, especially when they're in their little cafeteria area and some of the kids are starting to get picked off. There's this elevator kill that's brutal. There's this awesome little tense garbage disposal scene that I like. And some of the visual imagery of everything with Michael chasing them in the hallways and stuff like that is really good. Outside even, it's really good. The real tense moment when they're trying to get from within the locked gate and then the locked door, there's like this little section partitioned area. That whole scene is very tense. I just can't help but feel it, but it would have been way more tense with that synth music and that synth score rather than the symphony score, Oh, remember I was telling you Janet Leigh is in this, her mom in real life. There's this cool scene where she talks to her and says something, and then she's walking away from Jamie Lee Curtis, and as she's doing that, they're playing the theme from Psycho, and she's actually walking towards the same car that she was driving in Psycho.
Oh, Miss Tate, happy Halloween.
So for me, that kind of stuff I love. I love that homage stuff. And they do try to do some of that with Michael and Laurie as well. Like he cuts her on the shoulder at one point through the shirt, just like they did in the first one. There's a moment where Michael's in the background and they're talking and they think he's out, and then he does the whole sit-up thing, and like all that is there, and you can tell they were really trying with this. And I love the ending too, where Jamie Lee Curtis just chops off his head. Man, so satisfying. I mean, there's a showdown with Jamie Lee Curtis and Michael too, and Michael kills her boyfriend, Adam Arkin. Yeah, I forgot to tell you, Adam Arkin's in this, Alan Arkin's son. I do think it's kind of funny though when Michael's like doing that reverse pull up down from that pipe. It's like, how are you lifting yourself down like that? What are you, Spider-Man? Overall, Halloween H20 or H20 or Halloween 20 years later, whatever it's called, I think it's actually pretty damn good if you want to take that route of the lore. Because what's cool about this movie and now the David Gordon Green films is you could be like, all right, I just want to watch 1, 2, and H20, or I just want to watch 1, Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. I mean, there's all these different routes you can go, or you can cancel those out and just watch 4, 5, and 6. So there's a lot of fun to be had with this, I think. And at the end of the day, I think you can really tell that they cared about the franchise with this one and they were really trying to create something cool. I give Halloween H20 a B. Well, that'll do it for this review, guys. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it. And if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button so you can help us make it to the top. And as always, if life gives you lemons,